This is Comic Picks by the Glick.
I'm your host, Jason Glick.
Hey, Jason Glick, how the hell are you?
I'm good, John.
Oh,
Yourself?
not too bad. What are we going to be talking about? I think we have someone else in the room.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Myron, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How you guys doing today?
Excellent.
I've
Oh,
been I've been watching a lot of Game of Thrones and thus drinking a lot of wine, so we're going to be having a good old
Hey,
time.
Game of Thrones, that's like a soap opera for nerds, right?
Yes, sir.
So, what is on our plate tonight that we brought in and roped in Myron into this conversation?
okay. Well, tonight's like we worked with Myron because we are doing another Spider-Man centric podcast, and this is about Marvel's big latest Spider event. This is Spider-Geddon.
Spider-Geddon. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, it's like Armageddon for Spider-Man, or at least that's kind of what they want you to think.
So wait, Spider-Geddon. Like, okay, so is this based off of the movie? That's a dumb question, but I'll just throw it out there.
Kind of, not quite, but sort of really. Because this is basically like this follow up to Spider-Verse, which coincidentally Myron joined us a couple of years ago to talk about. Which it's like so Myron. So what are your memories of the original comic book version of Spider-Verse?
Oh man, ever since watching this new movie, it's been very vague, but what I really mostly enjoyed about the last Spider-Verse was just seeing all the different, I guess, spider totems get together to fight against the inheritors, and at least for me, who enjoys seeing all of, I guess I'm gonna start with Peter Parker, seeing Peter Parker's costumes throughout the years, and of course, you want to see like different spider people and different spider costumes and different spider abilities. Spider-Verse kind of illustrated that for me, being able to see like all these different spider people from all these different Spider-Verses that weren't necessarily Peter Parker, and just seeing the abilities that they brought to the table. And so with this new version of Spider-Geddon, or this continuation, I should say, we get to see that again. Plus, we get to see a Spider-Man that I have truly, truly enjoyed, and who has become one of my favorites, is the Spider-Man from the recent PS4 game, which, of course, I want to mention throughout this conversation, which ties into the Spider-Geddon storyline.
Yeah, it's like the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man. It's like gets his own like introductory issue. It's like he gets his like a zero issue. It's like to show you just like how important he is. And the thing is you could accuse Marvel of like just saying like, hey, like we're right on the coattails of this like extremely successful, it's like a popular video game adaptation of Spider-Man. But it's like, okay, first of all, it's like the PS4 Spider-Man is fucking incredible, right, Myron?
Definitely, and going off of what you just said, how this PS4 Spider-Man got his own comic and his own issue with number 0. I just want to mention to you that this week, Spider-Man City at War number 1 released, and it's called the Gamerverse, and I have issue number 1 and a variant issue number 1 holding in my hands right now.
Oh, so you picked that up? I haven't read it yet, but I mean I'm a trade waiter, so it's like. But I know that the guy they've got to adapt it, Dennis Hallam, or Dennis Hopeless, as he's also been called. It's like he can usually be you can usually rely on him to deliver some quality work. So how did that first issue turn out?
Actually, I haven't read it yet. I actually picked these up yesterday, and just like you, I feel reading trade is the best way to go, because you can just get the whole storyline down in one shot rather than waiting for issues to release. However, me, I'm a fan of like great artists and great artwork. I just still like to pick up some of these, especially when it comes to Spider-Man. I love picking up these individual issues and having the individual cover art and variant arts on my issues. So one of the buddies of mine at work, he was like, "Oh, dude, you gotta come to the comic book store right now. They just released a Spider-Man comic based off the game." So, yeah.
Who's throwing the art for this adaptation?
Let's see here. I'm gonna crack it open right now. So yeah, like there have been several variants on this. However, you know how variants work. Certain comic book stores have to order a certain amount before they get certain issues. So I have the standard cover. The artist is Michelle Brandini.
Oh, yeah, I know her. She's pretty good.
And the cover artist, which is awesome, this for the standard issue cover, is done by Clayton Crane.
Oh, wait, he's the guy who provided the art for issue 0, actually.
Yeah,
Spider-Geddon.
Yeah, and that was an amazing cover as well.
Yeah, it's like, but I mean, it's like one of the reasons like that. I think the Spider-Man game worked as well as it is because Insomniac, the developers, like did saw a lot of input from like people who actually write the Spider-Man comic book, such as Dan Slott and Christos Gage. Like Gage, who actually is responsible for writing the main story for Spider-Geddon. But it also feels kind of like this is kind of like that the Spider-Man game is kind of like their version of Ultimate Spider-Man, in the sense that, you know, hey, what would we do if we had like created our Spider-Man story from the ground up? And as you'd expect from like someone like Slott, who's done like lots of like really good and interesting Dr. Octopus stories over the years, like the game like focuses a lot on the relationship between Peter Parker and Dr. Octopus, or Otto Octavius, really.
Yeah, I mean we all know who he really is, but yeah, Otto Octavius. And you know, one thing that I really appreciate about the Spider-Verse storyline is that it kind of spun off additional Spider-Man comic or Spider-related comic books and characters, and this game in itself is kind of like a shot off of, you know, a Spider-Verse in itself.
It's its own like unique Spider continuity.
It's correct. Like it's its own Spider-Verse like its own Spider continuity, but this character is now part of this world and part of this Marvel universe, to where like we're gonna start seeing him in more video game sequels sooner than later. I hope we're gonna start seeing him in the comic book now, and we're gonna start seeing him team up in this storyline that we're discussing today. And yeah. I really like what they did with his character and his relationship with Otto Octavius in this story.
Yeah, because one of the interesting things they do with this, I mean, they actually find a really good reason to integrate him into the story. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, it's like, because like, I mean, while it's like, I'm kind of like lukewarm about the overall Spider-Geddon event, it's like, it does find a lot of interesting like things to do over the course of its story. It's like, because it's basically like one way to like, just think, like, finds a way to further the like the redemption of Otto Octavius in like the Marvel comics universe. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and the reason like that we get the Spider-Man from the video game in Spider-Geddon is because, like, you know, Otto Octavius, like, in the Marvel universe, is trying to find Spider-Man who would be receptive to him leading the charge against the Inheritors. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and that's where, and you bring up a good point, just because, you know, I don't want to spoil too much of the game for the listeners that, you know, haven't had the chance to play it just yet.
You should play it. It's really great.
Yeah, if you're a Spider-Man fan, or if you're just a comic book, or if you're just a comic book fan in general, this game does for Spider-Man as the Arkham Knight series has done for Batman. So I don't want to spoil anything for the listeners here, but what I love about this issue 0 is Peter's relationship with this Doc Ock, like you will, or I should say Otto Octavius again. Otto Octavius in the game, you do see Peter's father figure relationship with Otto Octavius, and the events that unfold, you're going to see how that evolves and that changes. Within this comic book, you're going to see how Peter kind of finds the relationship with Otto Octavius that he's, you know, genuinely wanted. And
yeah,
how
Otto, because in this comic, Otto has basically assumed the persona of basically being the superior Spider-Man again.
Correct, and that and his interaction with this Peter Parker, you kind of do see kind of mentorship, not only mentorship conversation, but interactions with the both of them, in which why this Peter is, on board on following Octavius to help save the multiverse from the Inheritors. And of course, before that happens, Peter says, hey, before I go, we need to take down Tarantula, and I need to tie up some loose ends before I could leave my city unattended. And it's interesting because before he ends up jumping the multiverse to follow Otto Octavius, you see a modernized looking Tarantula, which I say looks very, very cool. The art style in this issue 0, I have to say, is by far the best I've seen in this entire miniseries, and it's very stylized, very dynamic. And if you're a fan of Spider-Man, the different posabilities and motions that he takes when he's web slinging, fighting, dodging. I love the dynamic artwork in this issue. And before Peter goes off to the multiverse to assist with this threat, you get to see a little bit of the relationships that he's formed throughout the PS4 game with Mary Jane, with Miles, and he ties those loose ends up before we jump into issue 1.
Yeah, in fact, he actually name checks like the whole Spider-Geddon business. That feels like like very appropriate as well. Like, we could call it like when Otto was saying we face a virtual Armageddon like against us, and like PS4 Spider-Man is like, oh, can I call it Spider-Geddon? And it's like Octavius is like, no, please don't. It's like, oh no, I'm totally gonna trademark this.
Yeah, of course, and of course, Otto kind of has that like. What's the term I'm looking for? I guess kind of like condescending tone. And when you're actually reading this comic book, you can kind of hear that voice and hear what his voice would actually sound like, where he was like, I would never use such a patently ridiculous term.
Yeah, it's like, in fact, it's like, whenever I hear like, Otto Octavius speak as a superior Spider-Man, I keep hearing this really condescending English version for whatever reason, man.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, this is like basically the 0 issue, the introduction to this whole thing, because and even then, like, this 0 issue basically happens like 3/4 of the way in through the second issue of the event itself, because the Spider-Geddon event is a proper sequel to Spider-Verse, and so as Myron has said, like it's basically all about these various Spider people fighting against the Inheritors, the energy vampires who like hunt Spider people throughout the multiverse, and it's like my biggest issue with Spider-Verse. The original series was that the Inheritors were just like really like the generic enemies. Like they're just like, oh, it's like, yeah, you're energy vampires, you feed off Spider people, and it's like, oh man, it's like, okay, so you got anything more than that? No, not really. So
and even after Spider-Geddon, I still feel like they are kind of generic. At the same time, like I do feel like there is some future possibility in maybe legitimizing like their threat. I mean, we get a little bit of that on their threat to spider totems and their ability to wipe out all spider people from existence. However, almost like in Batman, where the world always needs to be a Batman. I feel in the Marvel Universe, the world always needs a Spider-Man, because or at least Peter Parker and, Miles Morales, they bring something to the table that no other Marvel hero can bring to New York, in my opinion.
True. And probably, like, you make a good point about, like, name-checking Miles Morales right here, because this is, like, the rare Spider event that actually doesn't have Peter Parker as its lead. Because the core narrative of this series, it's like basically involves Otto Octavius basically like really screwing up, in the sense that the Inheritors uses tech in order to come back to the 616 universe, and that it's like that he's got to while he's screwed up, it's like he realizes that, okay, well, now I know what we need to do, and we need to kill the inheritors in order to take them out. And Miles Morales is just saying, no, it's like that's not what we do because that's not what Spider-Man does. And much of the conflict in the series is really about like Octavius's viewpoint versus Miles's. But like this is like I said, it's interesting. 'Cause this is like the rare Spider event that doesn't involve Peter Parker. I mean, yeah, he shows up at the very end in the core in the core miniseries, but like I said, this isn't his story more than anything else. It's all about just like just Miles and Otto's differing worldviews right here.
And I really think that was the most entertaining part to me of this storyline, and I felt this was an important storyline for Otto Octavius and Miles Morales, because it really stepped up their leadership skills and their mindsets. Like Miles really had to step up as a leader to kind of like keep everyone together in that same mindset that Peter would. Like, no, we don't kill and we don't do this, like do it this way. This isn't what Spider-Man would do. And Octavius does, Octavius has his intelligent arrogance that gets in the way of what he properly needs to do to be a hero, and I think he comes to that realization a little bit more so as the storyline progresses, that he's really not a team player, and he feels that everyone should fall in line with him because he's the smartest guy in the room. However, what you said, when he donned the Superior Octopus costume and he was fighting what was that?
Was it Count Nefaria?
Yeah, Thank you, Count Nefaria. In the beginning, he both of those guys, were flexing their arrogance to each other, and it led Octavius to go back to villainous threats like, hey, I got your son here, I got your Uncle Vito here in Italy. He was threatening his family and showing how powerful he is through his intelligence to kind of overcome the battle, and that kind of shows that he's
applying the means justifies the ends approach that he loves.
Yeah, so it's like he still has those villainous. He's touting himself as being a superior hero, but he's using villainous tactics to try to get over that, and by wanting to kill the inheritors. Like me personally, I kind of agreed with him a little bit in the sense of like, yeah, at this point, just kill these guys and you don't have to worry about it ever again. But at the same time, like, knowing Miles and knowing Spider-Man and Peter Parker, great power comes great responsibility. I could see their point of view as like, no, we don't kill, we just need to lock them up somewhere. But, obviously you guys tried that prior during the
and it didn't work. It's how we got to this.
Exactly. So at that point, that's where the Spider team starts to divide, and Octavius kind of starts bringing on Spider warriors that would follow him and more side with him, and Miles rounded up some of the other Spider folks on his side to kind of like do what they need to do. So you start to see this divide in this great Spider army that was designed to take down the inheritors, but you had two principles, two ideas that honestly could have ultimately put a threat to the overall resolution to this problem.
Yeah, and it's like I like the fact that Octavius eventually realizes that it's like this is always going to be an issue between our two sides. So I've got to find some way to unite them. It's like and to his credit, he does. He actually finds a fairly credible way to unite everyone. At the end, to the point where it's like he even gets the 616's Peter Parker on his side to advocate this this approach as well. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it kind of feels like this whole thing, the whole point of the series was not only just to show you that Miles Morales really knows what he's doing as a Spider person, but also that Otto Octavius he is that his quote unquote redemption is it's like is genuine as well. It's like, I mean, yeah, he may have like like some ruthless villainous instincts, but he's also capable of overcoming them. It's like at the end of the day, and I thought that stuff was interesting. I mean, like think like bits like that were like were compelling, even though like the overall story, it's like because even though it's like it's like the creative drive of the series is kind of reversed from the original Spider-Verse series, because while that was like Christos sorry, Dan Slott writing with Christos Gage pitching in for occasional dialogue and plot assistance. This is basically like Christos Gage working from a plot supplied by Dan Slott. It's like it's like it kind of it's like it still kind of like felt fairly standard issue, because ultimately it's like the biggest weakness for the series is that the inheritors are still really generic energy vampire villains. It's like, yeah, it's like you can hear their like just their condescending English accents. It's like from like while you're reading their dialogue in your head, and it's kind of like whatever. It's like, but also I think the other thing that Spider-Geddon suffers from, and that's from the format as well, because I mean, Myron, you read this in like the 0 through 5 single issue form, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I got the trade paperback edition, which contains 0 through 5 as well as Vault of Spiders 1 through 2. But it's like there's also like lots of other it mentions like two core not two core, three like additional miniseries that the main story branches out into as well, because it's also the Edge of Spider-Geddon miniseries as well, and then there's the Spider Force and the Spider Girls a miniseries as well. And it's like and as I was reading this, it's like I kind of felt that, oh wow, it's like I'm kind of missing out on like some key aspects of the story here, because I mean, like at the beginning of issue 4, when Jessica Drew shows up and she's got Solus's like
stone,
she's his energy crystal, and then you found that, oh wow, she's killed one of the inheritors like in order to get this back as well. It's like, wow, this seems pretty important to the main story. Oh wow, we didn't get that right here.
Right, just like the Spider Girls, it was it Annie Parker?
Yeah, she's like, I think she's from the it's like Renew Your Vows continuity.
Right, I don't remember the universe numbers aside from 616, but she ends up becoming
the pattern maker.
The pattern maker, which is relevant to the web of.
Yeah, it's like she's got to like. She's apparently like the spider totem who can like repair the web. It's like the universal web, which was destroyed by like the Norman Osborn spider person. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of agree with you where like, the entire, I mean, comics have done that for years where like, when they have like a mini series or some type of big event going on, you have to buy like, there's a main storyline issue, but then like it's continued in, this book or in this book. But
in fact, like we've done this like before with previous Spider-Man mini series, like with the original Spider-Verse, where its collection. Its initial collection was a hardcover that offered like every single tie-in for like 800 pages, and it was like $75, I think. Same goes for like the Clone Conspiracy as well. The Spider-Geddon collection basically collects like the main miniseries and the Vault of Spiders issues, but it doesn't collect any of the tie-in issues as well, which seems like kind of a missed opportunity, considering how that the main miniseries makes a good point about how important these other tie-in issues are to the core story.
Right, but it's at least for me, they're enjoyable tie-ins or enjoyable team-ups, because I do like seeing the different the different Spider-Men, and I have to say one of the most enjoyable moments in this series for me was I believe it was when Otto Octavius and Peter Parker from the PS4 game go to Japan to pick up You know,
Oh, Leopardon. Yeah.
yeah, Leo Pardon, and he's fighting a monster and it's taking forever, and Otto kind of calls him out on it, like, why aren't you using your sword?
It's like lead with sword vigor.
Yeah, lead with sword vigor, and he's like, well, that's not honorable, and he's like, dude, it'll get the job done. And
but if I always fought this way, it would be boring.
It would be boring, yeah. And it was just like, I remember as a kid watching those, the Japanese Spider-Man series, and of course, like, as I gotten older, I've kind of ragged on it because it's like, this isn't Spider-Man to me. This is a typical Japanese, Sentai show with just Spider-Man, where you have a big robot that fights a monster of the day, each episode, and he doesn't have the abilities that Spider-Man should. And I love how they kind of called out on the cheesiness of it, especially Otto Octavius saying, yeah, just lead with sword vigor and call it a wrap, just end it. And ever since then, like, that Spider-Man has been saying, oh, I lead with sword vigor now, so we should be good. We'll be all right. So I love some of those like quips in there that they kind of joked around with, with certain, Spider characters. So, at least for me, like, I loved, just seeing Miles step up as a true leader and actually taking on the mantle of Spider-Man of the 616 universe. And I love how, Gwen Stacy, or Ghost Spider, as I think she became from this series. She kind of like, kind of helps, save the day and brought in that Spider Army at the end of the series. And at least for me growing up, I remember the 90s, Ben Reilly, Spider-Man, the original Scarlet Spider, and just hearing his story about how he's died 27 times and has been resurrected 27 times and has been.
Oh yeah, that was a bit of retcon from the Clones Conspiracy series.
Correct, and it's like, I totally forgot about that, because like I remember back then, the clone conspiracy, the clone saga was always kind of like Spider-Man's black eye back then. But I've always liked what came out of there. I liked Kane as a character. I liked Ben Reilly as a character, and I never, it was cheesy back in '96, but at the same time, like, I've always liked that storyline. So, but I'm biased. I'm a Spider-Man fan.
Okay, so would you say that you enjoyed the event overall?
Yeah, overall, it was a good read. Like you said, yeah, it had its corniness to it, but that's one thing I love about Spider-Man, is that he has a dynamic range of villains and a dynamic range of threats that happen to New York. And I really thought that this storyline was a good way to kind of help Miles step up in his role as Spider-Man, and I really thought it was a great way to help Otto step up in his role as the Superior Spider-Man, because they recently relaunched and brought back the Superior Spider-Man comic book. And so I thought this was a good way to kind of like really jumpstart those characters back into, or at least, jumpstart these characters to the next level of their growth in the Marvel Universe. And on top of that, like we mentioned earlier, this was like the perfect segue to me, how they launched Peter Parker from the PS4 universe into the comic line universe.
True. It's like I think there was a lot of good little things that I liked about this series. From like from the introduction of the PS4 Spider-Man to like Japanese Sentai Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. It's like, and just like furthering Otto Octavius's character. It's like, and Miles's as well. My problem is that I just don't think the core story of this series, fighting against the Inheritors was really that interesting. I mean, there's still just pretty generic energy vampire type characters, and while the resolution of the conflict against them does promise okay, maybe this is done for the future, and that we'll at least get maybe a different story about these characters from here on out. But this is for me, it really kind of felt that this is like a series where it's like its virtues were in like the little things in the margins, just in that and also the fact that it's like that it didn't have like, I mean, all like it needed like that all the others that it didn't feel complete with unless you had the other like tie-in issues as well. So it's kind of like you're dealing with the miniseries that had some good ideas, but also just kind of felt just really more corporate dictated than anything else. So it's like, I mean, like I thought it was all right, but is it something that I would recommend to fans to pick up? Not, I don't know. It's like not really. I mean, it had some decent art from Jorge Molina and Carlo Barberi, even though I'm still waiting for Molina to bring back and fully embrace the animated style that he displayed in those 3 issues of X-Force that I read years ago. But the overall art for the miniseries, I think, was pretty strong. It's like, though, Myron, it's like, what do you think about the arcs? I know that this is something that you're like much more interested in than I am.
Yeah, I was going to chime in on that. Quite frankly, I think I feel Jorge Molina did a really good job with the artwork in this series. Like, I think I'm very picky about my Spider-Man artists. Like, I love, like, Ryan Otley is a good Spider-Man artist.
Well, he's a good superhero artist in general. I mean, it's like, after years of Invincible, I mean, like, to not see him knock it out of the park with Amazing Spider-Man. Well,
oh yeah, true. I mean, it's like there have been some really great artists. Like, some might argue with me. I'm not a big fan of John Romita Jr. as a Spider-Man artist. Like,
just gonna let that slide right there.
Thank you. Like, that's just my opinion. Like, honestly, like, I grew up with John Romita and John Romita Jr. I don't really care for his Spider-Man artwork, but I love what he's done for DC. I love his artwork for Kick-Ass, but for Spider-Man, I was like, not too much. I've always been a Mark Bagley, Todd McFarlane. Excuse me, Eric Larson, but in this current age, like, Humberto Ramos is my favorite Spider-Man artist, and Jorge Molina, like, has become one of my favorite Spider-Man artists. Like, after reading this, I really love the artwork he portrayed, especially with Superior Spider-Man. There's some shots that he's done where I'm like, oh man, just like the proportions and the coloring. I know he probably didn't do the coloring, but I mean, the proportions and the scenes, like, they look great, and some of the dynamic fight scenes. But I really loved his artwork in this, and I thought it was fantastic. And I can agree with you too. Like, the Inheritors were kind of like Saturday morning villain kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, we're kind of like Saturday morning villain cartoonery. Like, okay, now that we got our cloning machines, we can resurrect our father. And I kind of get that, but I'm reading this book from like a 13-year-old mindset, so to speak. I'm like, yeah, it's cheesy, but it's cool seeing Spider-Punk there talking shit. Or like, oh, dude, like, I forgot about, Mayday Parker. Like, I think I really cared more about, like, seeing the different Spider people. And, it did sadden me when, Captain Britain Spider-Man UK got killed in the beginning, like, of the whole, conflict. I was like, oh, dude, that kind of sucked that, he got taken out that easily. But I really did enjoy Jorge Molina's artwork with some of the different Spider characters. And I admit too, there were some cheesy ass Spider-Man characters in there. Like at the very last issue, issue 5, where you see Aunt May as Spider-Man. I was like, oh my god! I was like, oh, for real, dude. Like,
yeah, it's like we're gonna bring in all the Spider people for here. It's like, and it's like I understand like how you think it was cheese, but I think for me that was kind of like the right level of cheese right here. Because if you're gonna like bring in like every Spider person, you gotta bring in like all of them. Like, remember, like the original Spider-Verse miniseries also brought in like the Spider-Man from the Marvel Superheroes game. It brought in the Hostess Fruit Pie Spider-Man. It brought in the Spider-Man from the Daily Comic Strip as well.
And see, and that's what I like about these Spider-Verse or this multiverse tie-in, because whether they belong there or not, or whether they're super cool or super cheesy, I love seeing them brought into a storyline like this, because I have some type of fondness of those characters in some sort of way.
Like remember, it's like it even at the very end, it brought in Spider Cop as well.
Exactly. Oh, dude. Yeah, that's one I was about to mention too. Like, if you're not familiar with it, like in the PS4 game, when Spider-Man is working with the police, he would talk to the police and be like, "Okay, Spider Cop is on the job," and we're like, "No, we're not."
Oh
doing
yeah, that was it was so gloriously dumb that I loved it, especially when at the end when Spider-Man's police contact finally bought in to the idea of Spider Cop as well. That was great.
Exactly.
And just the fact that when PS4 Spider-Man realizes that Spider Cop is real, oh, it's so great.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So like, I really enjoyed that. Just coming off of like the heels of beating the game, and like actually seeing that in there, I thought that was kind of like a little funny nod in there. But that's one thing I love about like the humor of Spider-Man is like, if you've seen Into the Spider-Verse, the latest animated film, there's a little scene in there with Spider-Man 2099 after the end credits, and I don't want to kind of spoil everything for the listeners, but just the aesthetic of what was going on during that whole sequence just made me crash out laughing, because I grew up with that style, and that's how I came into Spider-Man, through that animated style of that time. And so I love how Spider-Verse kind of ties in a lot of that, member berries, those member berries and nostalgia of Spider-Man from like the 60s all the way up into the present time, by adding in certain characters and certain styles into these storylines. So, but don't get me wrong, it has its shares of cheese, dude, because I don't really care for Uncle Ben as Spider-Man and his nephew Petey. I think that's kind of whack.
That's kind of like the wrong end of nostalgia for you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, I believe it. I can see it happening, but it's just kind of like, that's like, for me on the Batman front, that's like, Thomas Wayne as Batman and Bruce as Batsy, or some type of like cheesy sidekick.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So it's kind of this kind of the Spider-Man miniseries, Spider-Geddon and Spider-Verse are just kind of like the main reason they exist is just to provide lots of comforting fan service, for versions of Spider-Man that we think are a lot of fun and would love to see validated, either on screen or on the page, right?
Exactly. And like I mentioned before, Miles Morales has become, one of my favorite iterations of Spider-Man. I remember during the Ultimate Universe when that happened, I was like, he kind of got his powers, in the same manner, and it just kind of feels like the Peter Parker storyline regurgitated again, but at the same time, not really. And I like how he's kind of come out onto his own throughout the years. And with this particular storyline, I love how he kind of challenged the Enigma Force, when the Enigma Force presented itself, saying, who
dares summon me?
Yeah, who dares summon me? Like the arrogance, that you deem worthy, and each certain spider people, Pavitir and.
Which is oh, Miles, perhaps you should not antagonize the Cosmic Force.
Exactly, and Miles did. It's not that he intentionally antagonized it. He just told it straight up, look, who is worthy under your standards? None of us are worthy. We're just trying to solve a problem here, and Miles standing up and bringing the issues up to the forefront seemed to make him worthy, to where he became the Captain Universe of this fight. And I actually thought that was nerdgasm there really pretty cool, even though it was from like a short period of time. Even to the point where he actually picked up Sword Vigor and used it against Solus. So I mean, it's some of those little nerd fan services in there that really, you know, allowed me to appreciate, you know, this storyline and this comic line. But like I said again, don't get me wrong, it is Saturday morning cheese.
Yeah, it's like I definitely agree with you there, because I mean, it's like it's one of those series where it's like kind of like there are a lot of little things I liked about it, but I mean, like the core storyline was just kind of like pretty, like very standard issue, and like, you know, like, well, it's like it is kind of cool to see, like, you know, like Miles like whip up the like, you know, the Sword Vigor to destroy Solus. Like then, like when he basically says that, oh no, I don't want to think about what I just did. It's kind of like, oh, it's like, you know, he's like, yeah, he's kind of broken his vow, like, you know, not to kill, but like in the service of a really big fan servicey moment right there. But I mean,
oh, go ahead.
no, it's like, so it's kind of like, you know, it's like, I mean, it's like, I mean, like the main reason this series exists is to provide these kinds of fan servicey moments, but it's like, but it just doesn't have. I just like, well, like I don't think it was a necessarily inherently bad or even terrible story. It's like I just kind of wish there was like a much more interesting like story to underpin the event, which is also kind of I kind of was hoping with the original Spider-Verse as well. I mean, it's not that Marvel events can't you know, deliver like, you know, compelling stories at their core. I mean, you know, you look at stuff like Infinity or like Secret Wars, which, you know, were both done by Jonathan Hickman, but that's besides the point. But I think that, you know, it's like, I mean, like Spider-Geddon, it's, you know, it's not bad, but it's kind of like, unless you're like, this is definitely one for like people who are really invested in the like in the growth of Miles Morales and Dr. Octopus, or Otto Octavius as a superior Spider-Man. Like,
Right.
Yeah. So that, I guess that's kind of how I feel about it, really.
I mean, I'm gonna toss on my, you know, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory here, but you know, going to the Into the Spider-Verse movie and how successful and how well done that story was written. Now that that's on the table, now that that story has been put on the table, and we have Into the Spider-Verse and we have Spider-Geddon now, I'm hoping that both mediums could kind of like influence each other, whereas, you know, Spider-Geddon or Spider-Verse might not have been as well told or successful as this movie has been, but because this movie has kind of possibly set the bar on this type of storyline, maybe the comics could kind of learn from that, or maybe, you know, it'll kind of like spin into something bigger from that. So I mean, I can honestly see like a sequel to that movie being done that might incorporate the Spider-Geddon storyline, but it'll be really more fleshed out and well done. You know, more so than the comic book. That's a possibility, but I felt that Norman Osborn Spider-Man. So going to him, Norman Osborn Spider-Man, and what happened at the very end of this comic where he has a piece of the web of life, I kind of see him being more of a bigger threat than the Inheritors, because we all know how egotistical and maniacal that Norman Osborn can be.
Yeah, it's like I admit, it's like, you know, at the end of this event, is like kind of the setup for the next one, because there's obviously going to be a next one. Just kind of felt like, oh well, okay, because that's how these always are. It's like, but you know, as far as like, you know, like Into the Spider-Verse's like influence on this, I kind of figure that if they had realized, if the creators had realized like how successful Into the Spider-Verse would have been, they never would have killed off Spider-Man Noir.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like no one cared about Spider-Man Noir prior to Into the Spider-Verse. So
I can agree with that too. I totally forgot that he died. Yeah, he did. He sure did die.
He died. He died so easily, so right away.
Yeah,
So.
he did. I could just actually, when I first read that, like the whole time I was reading Spider-Man Noir lines in this storyline, I just pictured Nick Cage's voice.
Yeah, because well, I mean, Cage was so great. I mean, all the actors were great in that. But I mean, it's like, I think one of the best parts about Into the Spider-Verse was that they were just like pick and choose whatever they wanted from the from Spider continuity and just not be beholden to it. Even to the story that it took its name from. So
Mm-hmm.
so like, I
And
gotta admit, I feel a lot more confident about whatever Spider-Verse sequel Sony is planning right now because they are they said it, but I feel more confident about what they're planning right now than whatever third part to Spider-Verse, Spider-Geddon that Marvel has cooked up at the moment. So
yeah. Aside from comic book talk right now, like real quick point, like what you just said, I was a little apprehensive on. I'm glad that Spider-Man is part of the MCU, and he's been involved with these Avengers movies and had like the Homecoming and Far From Home movies. But I've always been apprehensive of Sony still holding on to the rights of Spider-Man films, but. Into the Spider-Verse has really proven that they still have something there, and if they can just stick with other, and quite frankly, regarding Venom, like I thought Venom was cheesy as shit, but I still enjoy it for what it is. It could have been better, but whatever. But
and they got the potential. It said the potential of seeing Cletus Cassidy as Carnage.
Exactly. Exactly. So I feel like I have more faith in Sony doing like those side projects and not main Peter Parker stuff as far as like live action films go, and they seem to be like really successful with it, and to just have Spider-Man be involved with the main MCU really kind of like touts his legitimacy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they come up with some great projects and great products, but allowing Sony to still be able to do these side products like this Morbius movie or Venom movies or Into the Spider-Verse sequels, like I'm really excited for that, and I'm glad that movie was successful for them to where they're able to kind of share the success and share the profits. So you do bring up a good point. Like I have a feeling we're going to see at least 2 more movies from this animated Miles saga. But sorry to shift gears again real quickly, but going back to issue 5 of this storyline, that issue was released during the time when Stan Lee passed away, and all the Marvel comics had the black bar, the black tagline, in memory of Stan Lee. And issue 5 of Spider-Geddon was one of those issues, and I have to point out one of the things that I loved about issue 5 is that once everything was all said and done, and they defeated the Inheritors and turned the kids back into babies, there, if you look closely, there's a couple panels where you'll see Stan Lee in there as a Spider character, and I really love how they kind of like threw that little nod in there for this issue, and it makes me wonder if any other issues that had that, in memory of Stan Lee, did that, and I would assume so. But I just wanted to bring that out, that I thought that was an awesome nod that they put, Stan Lee as a Spider character, amongst like that crowd of Spider people at the very end of this conflict.
Oh yeah, I see the page you're talking about after they dogpiled on the Inheritors. Yeah, it's like, and I see right there. That's a nice touch right there. It's very appropriate. It's like, and it also reminds me of the bit from the PS4 Spider-Man video game where he just mentions to Peter Parker and Mary Jane. He tells Mary Jane like, I always like seeing you two together. So yeah. But I mean, it's like I said, it's a nice thing seeing. It's like just the idea that you've got these projects that can draw from all sorts of Spider-Man continuity and create these like interesting and weird stories. Though it's like, as far as I'm concerned, I think that Into the Spider-Verse was easily the more successful of these two. Spider-Geddon, yeah, like I said, it's one for the converted, but that's how I feel. Myron, it's like, anything you want to say to wrap this up?
Not necessarily chime in anymore, but at the same time, like, I mean, anything could be said about any of these, like, Marvel series. I mean, Civil War was a big success, and then you have Civil War 2, and it was kind of like meh. And so, like, I could see that, with Into the Spider-Verse, the first of this storyline, like, oh, that's sweet, that's something, we've never seen before, or it's going to be a great storyline. Then you come out with Spider-Geddon, which essentially is like, Into the Spider-Verse 2. It's just kind of like, yeah, it's Saturday morning-y, but I appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. John, it's like I know you're still here. It's like, any thoughts on your end about all this?
Well,
are you still here?
I'm still here. I'm still here. Indeed, I am. So, no, I just think everyone, if you have your opinions about it, that's fine. I know you guys have talked about like the villains being kind of generic Saturday morning villains.
Yep.
It's always good to have, some character in your villains. I mean, you never. I mean, but it's not necessarily a requirement. And what do I mean by that? I think that sometimes, if you just enjoy the story, it depends on how reliant the story is on the villains, and if the plot is kind of is like your generic plot, or it falls flat, then sometimes it's good to see the interactions. And I do like how Myron was highlighting about Octavius, and and how it kind of made him change his perspective on how this is going to how he's going to handle the situation, because there are in my familiarity with the storyline is they're after all of them, but why, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so
yeah, I wish I could
and
talk
it also
more.
and it also drove Miles' story, is another thing you had mentioned. But I think that's I guess it depends on what the object is. Sometimes your villains can be a little generic. It depends, They can't all be.
Yeah, I mean,
they all can't be, masterminds. Although I do like it when they have more soul. So
I agree with that statement, and basically what you said, like, I related to Doc Ock. Like, I really wish I could talk more about it, but I just don't want to spoil it for you or anybody else that hasn't beaten or played the game. But playing through that game, Peter and Octavius's relationship is very powerful, and you being Spider-Man, like, you can kind of feel that yourself. Like, Peter has always been a nerd and really smart with in science, and you see Octavius really nurture that, and you really see a kind of father-son bond between those two. Especially after Uncle Ben has been passed away for like approximately like 9-10 years in that game, and picking up in this comic book, you kind of see that relationship carry over. Even though Peter has gone through what he's gone through with the events of the game, you see just kind of how he reacts to him. Like, oh man, like, my Octavius was never like you, or like, oh, my Octavius, he had a similar mindset, but he went in a different direction.
He could eventually be like I could see like how like you could actually be like my Octavius if you like really applied yourself.
Exactly, and I really love how they portrayed that, because out of all the quote unquote father figures in Peter's life, I mean, you have Norman Osborn to a degree, you have Uncle Ben. Like, I think Otto Octavius was more of a positive father figure in his life because of their love for science, and they kind of nurtured each other. And I really like how that was kind of portrayed in this book, how the relationship, and Peter really trusted him. And there was a point in the comic book where Peter went against Otto, where he was like, Miles told me everything about you, and you're not the man I thought you were. But at the end of the day, Octavius had a plan, a master plan all along, to defeat the Inheritors. He just didn't tell anybody about it. And
yeah, it's like that was another one of the bits that I liked about the it's like about the main story as well. Even though it's like I as it was playing out, I kind of realized, wait a second, I think I know where this is going. So, but like I said, lots of little things to like about this, even if I don't think it was like completely successful overall.
Oh, that sounds great. So, do you know what you're going to be talking about next time on the podcast, Jason?
Oh, well, next time we're going to talk about like a villain who is like very successful in his objectives. That would be Darth Vader.
Darth
Because
Vader.
Oh,
it turns
snap.
out that 'cause it turns out that his latest series, well, it's like, it might actually be better than any of us were expecting. So we'll see about that.
All right, we'll catch you next time on Comic Picks by the Glick.
All right, laters.
Bye.
Later, guys.
See ya.